we all of those things about the the manner in which we speak and the expectations we have are set in our family of origin.
Mm.
And so, like in my in my family where I grew up, my mum was a shouter and my dad was shut down. So there were a lot of arguments, but they mostly consisted of my mum shouting at my dad and my dad just kind of standing there, looking at the floor, not really engaging,
Mm.
but putting up an amazing amount of passive resistance because he always got his way. And so I
Right.
learned from them. I learned both methods, and neither of them are relational.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
guess
it's interesting.
that's the inner level. That's a really kind of sort of the outer level of the patriarchal thing. This is like what happens in your family. And then within that, there's the differences. So this is going back to about the early, probably no, probably late 70s. A psychoanalyst, I think she was, came up with this theory, and it may or may not be true, but it makes sense to me, is that girls and or children are normally raised by their mothers in terms of the primary caregiver that after a couple of weeks that goes back to work. You might get longer than that these days, but you know.
Mhm.
Um, so when they're forming a gender identity, girls have got it in front of them. There's their role model with them all the time until they go to school. Where's the boy's role model? He's out at work. He may not get in till 7 p.m. If he's lucky, he gets to spend a bit of time with his dad before he goes to bed. So his gender identity is formed in opposition to his mother. It's like a negative image of his mother.
Mm.
And that it's not like you sat down and thought, I'm a boy, so therefore I'm going to not be caring and I'm not going to be nurturing and I'm not going to want to connect with other people. It just happens by default. Now, this may actually be a load of rubbish, but it makes a lot of sense to me. And
Mm.
it it explains why women are much more concerned with connection with other people and forming relationships. And whereas boys, it's like, yeah, I can stand on my own, I can be individual. And I know that's a kind of those are the opposite poles of masculine and feminine, aren't they? So
Yeah.
obviously we all can move along that.
Yeah. It's really it's so complicated. Hence the the comment at the beginning is like this is not the
Yes.
be all and end all of all of this. But it is one of those things that from such an early age we are exposed to so much messaging. And exactly
Mm.
as you say, on one hand, for the first however many years, there's typically a, a greater level of feminine influence on
Mm.
children. And if you're female and you're getting a lot of the kind of reinforcement of who you think you're supposed to become. If you're male, there's this kind of negative space trying to find your way. And then there's all these other influences of media and social media and friends and other people's relationships and all these different things that are shaping what we expect relationships to be. And that isn't even directly taking into account we see a relationship. If we grow up in a household that has two caregivers, we see how a relationship works. And I remember growing up in with my mum and my dad and just thinking, I don't understand how this works, but this is not a model I want to replicate. They were married
Yeah.
for decades and decades and decades